past few days of Hurricane Ida and the wildfires in the West and the unprecedented flash floods in New York and New Jersey is yet another reminder that these extreme storms and the climate crisis are here. We need to be much better prepared. We need to act. This isn't about politics. Hurricane Ida didn't care if you were a Democrat or a Republican, rural or urban. This destruction is everywhere, and it's a matter of life and death.
President Biden urging action on climate change. The country has been rocked by natural disasters from coast to coast. The devastating wildfires in the Tahoe Basin, blazes in the West spanning over 200,000 acres, and that massive flooding on the East Coast as Ida bludgeoned much of the Northeast last night. The president called it a matter of life and death. The inaction is also a costly one. The Center for American Progress estimating that last year alone, climate-related extreme weather cost Americans $99 billion. They say that number is likely to increase as the situation worsens. Let's turn to Dr. Brian Tang, atmospheric scientist at the State University of New York at Albany. Our friend Matt Dowd is still here. Dr. Tang, what can be done now? Say you have everyone's attention, including the one-time naysayers. What can be done now?
Well, as Governor Hochul said, we need to increase our resiliency to extreme weather and climate change-related natural disasters. And that involves knowing one's risk, for instance, with flooding, knowing if you are in a high-risk area for flooding, and fortifying our defenses. One of the success stories out of Hurricane Ida was the improved levee system in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, which held up during the intense winds and storm surge and prevented flooding within the city limits itself.
When you look forward, when you pull the thread forward, it seems to me it's been clear to folks like yourself what is coming, and it's been more the dysfunction in our politics has prevented us from acting. When you look forward now, what do you see?
So in terms of heavy rainfall, like we saw in New York City last night, which was completely awful and terrible, we can expect more of that to happen. As the Earth's atmosphere warms, it can hold more water vapor, more moisture, and that moisture is going to then be causing heavier rainfall events in hurricanes, in summertime thunderstorms. And it's not just in the U.S., we've been seeing it around the world. So we can expect that to continue and possibly even get worse.
Matt Dowd, there's not equal blame in this country, at least, for inaction. You had one party, the Republicans, I don't know if they still do this, but wrestling over whether or not it was real. And as the governor said, and the president has said, the weather doesn't discriminate between which party you are registered for. What do you make of whether this is a moment when we can actually do something big?
Well, I don't think we have a choice.
I'm sorry, let me bring Matthew in, scientist.
I think we don't have any choice in the matter because the globe is at stake, and it's the planet by which we draw sustenance and live on, and our children live on. So we have no choice in this. To me, this is a fundamental thing, and you're exactly right. There's not equal blame, and there's not both sides on anything close to this issue, which actually both sides stuff has hurt us in getting anything done. There is one side that has listened to science and one side that hasn't. And I think this issue of climate change, which in my view is the greatest global threat, and we're about to have more deaths in a year in the globe because of climate change than all of the world wars in the last 100 years combined. We're about to face a time when we have more deaths because of climate change. But fundamentally, the problem is Republicans don't believe in the common good. That's affected their COVID response. That affects their response to the guns. That affects their response to everything. They don't believe in the common good, and they discount science. And when you don't believe in the common good and you discount science, we end up here doing nothing about climate change in our time. We are fast approaching, unless we fundamentally do something in the next 12 to 24 months, an irreversible problem that we're going to be facing this week, every single week. And it's going to include droughts. It's going to include deaths. It's going to include freezes. It's going to include all of that. And until we elect people that believe in science and believe in the common good, we're never going to do anything about this until we do that.
Dr. Tang, do scientists see the fires in the West and the flooding in the East as a new normal? I feel like I heard you talk about resistant infrastructure as though we should plan now for this to be the normal for us.
Yes. Wildfire scientists and climate scientists agree that the escalation in megafires and the extension of the wildfire season is in part due to climate change. And the flooding, the increased extreme rainfall that we're seeing in hurricanes, in thunderstorms, is also the fingerprint of climate change. So it's in our best interest to start taking the steps needed to harden our infrastructure and protect life and property against these natural disasters.
Matt Dowd, we started this show talking about your state. I mean, I'm just thinking of your power grid going out, the extreme weather in Texas. There's so much control in state and local leaders. What are your hopes that anything will change where you live?
Well, I think local leaders are responding in many ways in the forefront of all of this with integrity. They're responding it on this. They're trying to figure out ways to help their citizens related to climate change. They're doing all they possibly can. They've done it. We had 700 people in Texas die because of the grid. And you know what the state legislators and the GOP response to that was? Make it easier for corporations to charge consumers more. That was their response to the grid failure in our state. They didn't do anything to buck it up. They didn't make the corporations do improvements they needed to do. They just made it easier, if they were going to do something, to charge consumers more. And so I think that we have a shot here in Texas at electing people in 2022 that actually believe in science and believe in the common good and can do something on us. But we all have to wake up to this and the idea that we're faced with this. And there is a huge chunk of GOP leadership that wants to do nothing to fix this monumental problem.
Dr. Brian Tang and Matt Dowd, thank you both so much for being part of our coverage. The next hour of Deadline White House starts after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.